Hello guys! Welcome back to my channel, a channel that discusses very dramatic movie stories, guys. In this video, I'll take you to watch a very dramatic movie about this story, entitled Vicious. Before the story begins, don't forget to hit subscribe and like. Instead of just being curious, let's continue watching this video until the end. Okay?
They say there is a thin, razor-sharp line between love and hate, a boundary so fragile that a single heartbeat can shatter it forever. He never truly believed in that glitch until he met Baron Vicious Spencer, a man who possessed the power to ruin my life while simultaneously being the only person he almost allowed myself to love. Our story began in the suffocating shadows of the Spencer estate, where my mother worked as a humble housekeeper, laboring under the cold gaze of a master who treated people like disposable assets. My mother's warnings were constant and filled with a desperate kind of fear. She pleaded with me to stay away from Baron, the heir to the Spencer throne. She had seen how the father used and discarded her, and she was terrified that the son would do the same to me. He promised her he would keep my distance, but destiny has a cruel way of ignoring promises made in the dark. The first time he truly saw Baron, he wasn't the untouchable prince of the campus. He was a broken son being humiliated by his own father. He witnessed a moment of raw, ugly vulnerability that he was never meant to see, and although he lashed out at me with a venomous tongue to hide his shame, he felt an inexplicable pull toward him. That moment of pity was my first mistake. From that day forward, Baron made it his personal mission to make my life a living hell. He transformed into a relentless bully, mocking my status as a scholarship student and the daughter of the help. He pushed my buttons with a calculated cruelty, trying to get under my skin just as he had unintentionally gotten under his. Every encounter was a battlefield of egos, where he fought dirty to maintain his league, while he struggled to keep my dignity intact amidst his constant psychological warfare. The conflict reached a fever pitch when a complex love triangle emerged between US and his best friend, Din. Baron's jealousy was a silent, simmering volcano that finally erupted when he saw US together. Unable to bear the sight of me with someone else, he used his family's immense power as a weapon, threatening to fire my mother and ensure she never worked again, which would leave my sickly sister, Rosie, without the life-saving treatments she desperately needed. Faced with no more other choice, he accepted a check for $100,000 to break up with Din and vanish from Baron's sight forever. He left the city with a heart full of bitterness, thinking he had escaped the monster. But 10 years later, fate brought us back together in a high-end restaurant where he was slumbing it as a waitress. Baron, now a billionaire lawyer, walked back into my life, seeing the wreckage his past actions had caused, and offered me a new contract that would change everything once again. The air in the restaurant felt stagnant and heavy the moment Baron Spencer stepped through the door, his presence commanding the attention of every patron like a dark eclipse. He stood frozen by the service station, the tray in my hand suddenly weighing a ton as he watched him navigate the room with a cold, practiced elegance. 10 years had sharpened his features, turning the handsome bully of my youth into a devastatingly beautiful man with eyes like polished flint. He looked like he belonged on the cover of a magazine, a stark contrast to my worn-out uniform and the faint scent of dishwater that seemed to cling to my skin. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic, rhythmic reminder of the girl he used to be and the man who had systematically dismantled her world. He wanted to run, to hide in the kitchen among the steam and the noise, but my feet were anchored to the floor by a decade of unresolved trauma and a sudden, terrifying spark of recognition. As Baron sat down at his table, flanked by his wealthy associates, he could feel his gaze searching the room until it landed on me with the precision of a heat-seeking missile. There was no more surprise in his expression, only a chilling, predatory satisfaction that told me he knew exactly where he was all along. He remembered the way he used to corner me at my locker, the way he would whisper insults that felt like caresses, and the way he had eventually forced me into exile. The restaurant's soft jazz music seemed to fade into the background, replaced by the internal roar of my own blood rushing through my ears. He took a deep breath, smoothing my apron and adjusting my name tag, trying to summon the strength to be the professional waitress he expected. He was Amelia LeBlanc now, a woman who had survived the streets and paid her bills, not the broken girl named Hope who had fled into the night with a check in her hand and tears in her eyes. Baron's friend, Trent, was the first to speak, his voice dripping with a familiar, arrogant condescension that brought back a flood of high school memories. He mocked my current state, calling it, slamming it, and suggested that for $100, he might be willing to do more than just serve drinks. The insult stung. A sharp reminder that to men like them, he would always be the help, regardless of how many years had passed. He saw Baron watch the exchange, his face an unreadable mask of ice, but he noticed the way his jaw tightened ever so slightly. He didn't defend me. He simply observed the humiliation as if it were a scientific experiment. He stood my ground, my voice steady as he asked if they were going to order or if I should move onto a table that actually intended to eat. In that moment, the power dynamic felt ancient. The wealthy predator and the resilient prey, locked in a dance that neither of us knew how to quit. The situation escalated when Trent, emboldened by Baron's silence and the expensive wine, reached out and grabbed my arm, his grip tight and disrespectful. He brought up Din, mentioning how he had been a collection for their group back in the day. The rage that had been simmering in my gut for 10 years finally boiled over. He didn't sing, he acted. He pulled my arm back and delivered a sharp, stinging slap across his face that echoed throughout the quiet dining room. The silence that followed was absolute. Trent gasped, clutching his cheek in disbelief, while Baron finally stood up, his height casting a long, intimidating shadow over the table. He felt the weight of my impending termination, knowing that hitting a high-profile client was the end of my job, but the surge of adrenaline and self-respect felt better than any paycheck ever could. The restaurant manager, Rachel, came rushing over, her face a mask of horror as she assessed the scene. She didn't ask for my side of the story. She immediately began groveling to Baron and his friends, apologizing for my unacceptable behavior. She fired me on the spot, her voice shrill and unforgiving, declaring that the damages to the restaurant's reputation would be deducted from my final paycheck. I stood, sir, stripped of my livelihood in a matter of seconds, feeling the familiar coldness of the Spencer curse. Baron just watched, his eyes fixed on me with an intensity that felt like a physical weight. He didn't look angry. He looked intrigued, as if my defiance had provided the entertainment he had been seeking all evening. He turned and walked toward the locker room. My head held high even as my heart crumbled at the thought of telling Rosie that he had lost our only source of income. He was cleaning out my locker, my hands shaking as he stuffed my few belongings into a backpack, when the door to the staff area creaked open. He didn't need to turn around to know who it was. He could feel the temperature in the room drop. Baron stepped into the cramped, dimly lit space, looking entirely out of place in his $1,000 suite. You always did have a temper, Amelia, he sighed, his voice a low, smooth purr that sent shivers down my spine. I turned to face him, my eyes blazing. What do you want, vicious? Haven't you taken enough from me? You got me fired, you humiliated me in front of your friends. Is that what gets you hard? Seeing me suffer, he moved closer, trapping me between his body and the cold metal lockers, his scent a mix of expensive sandalwood and power overwhelming my senses. Baron leaned in until his lips were inches from my ear, his breath hot against my skin. It didn't get you fired, Amelia. You did that all by yourself. But I am here to offer you a way out. A way to pay for Rosie's medical bills without having to serve drinks to shows like Trent. He pulled a folded contract from his breast pocket and held it out to me. He looked at it with a mixture of suspicion and desperate hope. It was a formal employment agreement, offering a salary that was more than he had earned in the last 5 years combined. The position was personal assistant, but he knew with Baron, nothing was ever that simple. So were always strings, always traps, and always a price that had nothing to do with money. He looked into his flinty eyes and realized that the thin line between love and hate was about to become a noose around my neck once again. The ride to the Spencer estate was a silent journey through a city that felt like a ghost of my past. He sat in the back of Baron's tinted SUV, watching the familiar landmarks blur by, feeling like a prisoner being returned to her cell. Baron sat next to me, occupied by his phone, but he could feel his awareness of me in the small space. He didn't offer any conversation, and he didn't ask for any. He was too busy calculating the risks. Was he selling my soul again? Or was he finally taking back what the Spencers owed me? When we finally pulled through the iron gates of the estate, the sight of the grand mansion made my stomach churn. This was the place where my mother had been broken, where Rosie had first gotten sick, and where Baron had first shown me the meaning of the word vicious. The interior of the mansion hadn't changed much in a decade, still filled with the same cold opulence and the echoing silence of a family that had no more heart. Baron led me to a private study on the second floor, a room that smelled of old books and fresh ink. He gestured for me to sit while he poured 2 glasses of amber-colored liquid. "Welcome home, Amelia," he sighed, though the words felt more like a threat than a greeting. He handed me a glass, his fingers brushing against mine for a fleeting second, sending a jolt of electricity through my arm. He ignored the drink, focusing instead on the contract he had placed on the desk. He needed to know exactly what he expected of me in exchange for the fortune he was offering. The terms are simple, Baron began, pacing the room like a restless wolf. You will be at my beck and call 24 hours a day. You will manage my schedule, handle my private affairs, and accompany me to events when required. In return, you will handle all of your sister's expenses. Top doctors, best facilities, everything. No more waitressing, no more slums. He looked at him, searching for the catch. And what about the private affairs part, Baron? Is this just another way for you to torture me? He stopped pacing and looked at me, a dark, predatory smile playing on his lips. You think too much of yourself, Amelia. You have plenty of women who are willing to fuck me for free. I want you because you're the only person who knows exactly what I am capable of. He spent the first night in the servants' quarters, a poetic irony that wasn't lost on me. It was the same room my mother had occupied, though Baron had seen to it that it was renovated with modern comforts. He lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Rosie. She was at the small clinic on the edge of town, waiting for the medicine he could finally afford. He had called her before he went to bed, my voice thick with emotion as he told her that things were going to be okay. She didn't ask where the money came from. She just told me she loved me, that love was my anchor, the only thing keeping me from drowning in the darkness of the Spencer mansion. He knew that tomorrow, the real work would begin, and he would have to face the man who was both my savior and my executioner. Baron's work schedule was a grueling testament to his ambition and his need for control. As his personal assistant, he was thrust into a world of high-stakes litigation and billionaire mergers. He watched him in the courtroom, a little orator who could dismantle an opponent's argument with a single, devastating question. He was brilliant, calculating, and entirely without mercy. He treated his clients with the same cold detachment as his enemies, viewing everyone as a variable in a grand equation of power. He found myself becoming an essential part of his machine, anticipating his needs before he even articulated them. It was a dangerous form of intimacy, one that allowed me to see the gears of his mind turning, and for the first time, he began to understand why he was called vicious. Our interactions were strictly professional, at least on the surface. But in the quiet moments between meetings or during long drives to the city, the air between us would crackle with the tension of 10 years of unspoken words. He would catch me looking at him, and for a split second, the mask of the billionaire lawyer would slip, revealing the wounded boy he had seen in his father's bedroom. He hated that he saw him, and he hated that he still cared. He would respond by being even more demanding, giving me impossible tasks or critiquing my work with a sharpness that was designed to remind me of my place. But he wasn't the girl who had fled anymore. He pushed back, matching his sharp tongue with my own, refusing to let him win the psychological war he was so desperate to wage. The first major event he required me to attend was a charity gala for the city's most influential elites. He spent the afternoon being groomed by a team of stylists he had hired, transformed into a woman who looked like she belonged in his world. When he walked down the stairs in a floor-length emerald silk gown, Baron was waiting at the bottom, looking stunning in a custom tuxedo. He stared at me for a long time, his gaze traveling from my heels to the diamonds around my neck. You look acceptable, he sighed, though his eyes told a different story. He offered me his arm, and as we walked into the ballroom, he felt the collective weight of 1,000 judgments. To the world, he was the mystery woman on the arm of the city's most eligible bachelor. To Baron, he was the girl he had bought and paid for. The gala was a minefield of social politics and ancient grudges. He saw people he had known in high school, now successful businessmen and socialites who looked at me with a mixture of confusion and recognition. Baron paraded me around the room, introducing me to his associates with a possessive pride that made my skin crawl. He was marking his territory, showing the world that he had finally reclaimed the prize that had escaped him a decade ago. He played the part, smiling and engaging in polite conversation, but internally he was screaming. He felt like a trophy on a shelf, a shiny object designed to enhance his image while my true self was buried under layers of silk and expensive perfume. The night took a dark turn when Dean arrived at the gala. He looked older, more rugged, and far more grounded than Baron. When he saw me, the shock on his face was palpable. He ignored Baron entirely, walking straight to me and taking my hands in his. Amelia, is it really you? What are you doing here? With him? The concern in his voice was genuine, a stark contrast to the coldness of the room. He felt a surge of affection for the boy who had once tried to protect me, but before he could answer, Baron Wasser, his hand tightening on my waist as he pulled me back toward him. The confrontation between the two former friends was silent but lethal, a collision of two very different versions of my past. "She's with me, Din, and she's exactly where she belongs," Baron sighed, his voice a low, dangerous growl. Din looked at Baron with a mixture of pity and disgust. "You haven't changed a bit, have you? You still think you can buy people's loyalty?" Baron laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "I didn't buy her loyalty, Din. I bought her future, something you were never capable of providing." He felt like a piece of meat being fought over by two wolves, and he finally had enough. He pulled away from both of them, my voice trembling with suppressed rage. "I am not a contract, and I am not a prize. I am a person, and if either of you had any respect for me, you would stop talking as if he wasn't standing right here." He walked away, disappearing into the crowd, needing to find a place where he could breathe without the suffocating weight of their expectations. I found myself on the balcony, staring at the city skyline, the cold night air a welcome relief from the heat of the ballroom. He was crying before he even realized it, tears of frustration, grief, and a profound sense of loneliness. He had everything he had ever wanted: money for Rosie, a stable life, security, but he felt more empty than he ever had when he was waitressing. He heard the balcony door open and close, and he didn't need to look to know it was Baron. He stood at the railing next to me, his silhouette sharp against the city lights. We stayed in silence for a long time, the only sound the distant hum of traffic below. "Do you still love him?" Baron finally asked, the question catching me off guard. I turned to him, my face streaked with tears. "He loved the boy he was, Baron. Just like he almost loved the boy you could have been. But we're not those people anymore." He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of genuine pain in his eyes. He reached out, his hand hovering near my face before he finally tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. "He did it for you, Amelia. Everything. The money, the career, the power. You wanted to be the man who could give you everything, so you would never have to look at another man for help." He realized then the depth of his obsession. It wasn't just about control, it was a twisted form of devotion born from the ruins of his own childhood. He was a monster, but he was a monster he had helped create. The weeks that followed were a blur of work and quiet domesticity at the estate. Baron began to involve me in more than just administrative tasks. He sought my opinion on cases and strategy, recognizing that my perspective was a valuable asset. We spent late nights in the study, our heads huddled over documents, the barriers between us slowly beginning to dissolve. I saw a side of him that he hid from the rest of the world, a man who was deeply lonely and haunted by the expectations of his father. We started to talk about things other than work: our favorite books, our dreams for the future, the things we had lost. It was a fragile, dangerous piece, one that he knew could be shattered at any moment by the ghosts of our past. Rosie's condition began to improve significantly thanks to the specialists Baron had hired. He visited her every weekend, bringing her stories of the life he was living. He didn't tell her about the bullying or the blackmail. He only told her about the beautiful mansion and the important work he was doing. She looked at me with such pride that it broke my heart. She thought he was a princess in a fairy tale, not realizing that he was a servant in a gilded cage. But seeing the color return to her cheeks and the light return to her eyes made every sacrifice worth it. Baron occasionally accompanied me on these visits, and he was surprised by how gentle he was with her. He would bring her books and toys, sitting by her bed and listening to her talk with a patience he had never seen him exhibit with anyone else. The peace was finally shattered when Baron's father, the elder Mr. Spencer, returned from an extended trip abroad. He was a man of ancient, frozen cruelty who saw me as a stain on his family's reputation. He cornered me in the hallway one afternoon, his eyes filled with the same disgust he had seen 10 years ago. "I see you've crawled back into our lives, Amelia. I hope you're enjoying the scraps my son is throwing you." He made it clear that he would do everything in his power to remove me from the estate, threatening to cut Baron off entirely if he didn't dispose of me. He felt the familiar coldness of the Spencer curse closing in, realizing that no matter how much Baron had changed, his father was still the same monster he had always been. The confrontation between Baron and his father was a seismic event that shook the entire estate. He listened from the top of the stairs as they roared at each other in the dining room, their voices echoing through the marble halls. Mr. Spencer accused Baron of being weak, of being controlled by the daughter of a servant. Baron countered by declaring that he was the one who had built the Spencer fortune into a billion-dollar empire, not his father. He told his father that if he ever spoke to me like that again, he would ensure that the elder Spencer spent the rest of his life in a nursing home with nothing to his name. It was a declaration of war, and Baron was fighting for me. He felt a surge of pride and terror, realizing that the stakes of our relationship had just become astronomical. After his father left, Baron found me in the hallway, his face pale and his eyes blazing with adrenaline. He didn't say a word. He simply pulled me into his arms and kissed me, a desperate, hungry kiss that spoke of 10 years of repressed longing. It didn't pull away. It kissed him, but with the same intensity. Our shared history of pain and obsession finally erupting into a fire that we could no more longer control. In that moment, the line between love and hate vanished entirely, replaced by a raw, unadulterated need. We were two broken souls finding solace in the only other person who truly understood the darkness we had both endured. Our relationship shifted into a new, intense phase after that night. We were no more longer employer and employee, but something much more complex and dangerous. We lived in a world of our own making within the walls of the mansion, ignoring the judgments of the outside world and the threats of his father. But the shadows of the past were always lingering. Baron's jealousy remained a constant presence, a dark undercurrent that threatened to pull us under. He would still track my movements and question my interactions with other men. His need for control a permanent fixture of his personality. He tried to help him heal, to show him that trust was possible, but the wounds of his childhood were deep and jagged. The final test of our relationship came when Baron was accused of legal malpractice in a high-profile case. It was a calculated setup by his father, a final attempt to destroy Baron's reputation and force him to return to the family fold. The evidence looked damning, and Baron's associates began to distance themselves, fearing the fallout. He watched as the man who had always been so strong and untouchable began to crumble under the weight of the betrayal. He retreated into himself, drinking heavily and pushing me away, convinced that he was finally going to lose everything. He realized that it was my turn to be the savior. He used my knowledge of the Spencer family as private records and my access to Baron as files to conduct my own investigation. He worked day and night, tracing the source of the fraudulent documents and identifying the people his father had bribed. He reached out to Dean, asking for his help in navigating the city's legal underbelly. Together, we uncovered a web of corruption that led straight back to the elder Mr. Spencer. It was a dangerous mission, one that put my life and Rosie's safety at risk, but he didn't care. He was fighting for the man he loved, the monster who had saved me and the boy he had never truly forgotten. The trial was a spectacle of high-stakes drama. Baron's father sat in the front row, a smug smile on his face as the prosecution presented their case. But when he was called to the stand as a surprise witness, the atmosphere in the courtroom changed. He presented the evidence he had gathered, the emails, the bank records, the recorded confessions. He detailed the systematic abuse and manipulation that Baron had endured at the hands of his father, turning the trial into a public execution of the Spencer patriarch's reputation. Baron watched me from the defense table, his eyes filled with a mixture of shock, pride, and a deep, soul-stirring laugh. Baron was acquitted of all charges, and his father was forced into a humiliating retirement, his power stripped away by the very son he had tried to break. The victory was total, but the emotional toll was immense. Baron and I stood on the steps of the courthouse, surrounded by the flashing cameras of the press, but we only had eyes for each other. We had survived the ultimate test, outplaying the monster who had defined our lives for so long. We were finally free, not just from his father, but from the baggage of our past. We returned to the estate that evening, but it didn't feel like a prison anymore. It felt like a home. Baron led me to the balcony where we had once stood in silence, and he knelt before me. This time, there were no more contracts, no more checks, and no more threats. He held out a simple gold ring, his eyes full of a vulnerability he had never seen before. Amelia, I have spent my whole life trying to own you, but I realize now that I only want to be yours. Will you marry me, not as my assistant, but as my equal? He looked at the man who was both vicious and gentle, and he realized that the line between love and hate had finally led me exactly where he was meant to be. Our wedding was a quiet affair at the estate, attended only by Rosie, Dean, and a few close friends who had stood by us during the trial. It was a celebration of resilience and the transformative power of a love that had been forged in the fire. As we exchanged vows under the ancient oaks of the property, He felt a sense of peace he had never thought possible. He was no more longer the housekeeper's daughter or the vicious lawyer's pawn. He was a woman who had reclaimed her life and found a partner who respected her strength. The Spencer name was no more longer a curse. It was a promise of a future built on truth and integrity. Rosie's health continued to improve until she was finally able to live a normal life. She went to college, studying to become a doctor herself, inspired by the people who had saved her. She remained the light of our lives, a constant reminder of why we had fought so hard. Baron became a champion for legal reform, using his wealth and influence to protect those who were being taken advantage of by the powerful. He was still called vicious by some, but it was now a term of respect for his relentless pursuit of justice. We built a life of purpose, turning the Spencer legacy into a force for good in the city. Our journey wasn't always easy. Baron still struggled with his insecurities, and he still had moments of doubt. But we had learned how to talk to each other, how to face the shadows together instead of letting them tear us apart. We traveled the world, exploring the beauty of a life lived in the light. We had children of our own, raising them in a home filled with love and laughter, far away from the cold opulence of our own childhoods. We were a testament to the fact that you can write your own ending, no matter how the first chapters of your story were written. He often looked back on the night in the restaurant, the moment Baron walked through the door and changed my world again. He realized now that it was the catalyst for my own transformation. He had pushed me to find my strength, to stand up for myself, and to realize my own worth. He was the monster who had forced me to become a queen. We were two broken pieces that had finally found their feet, creating a picture that was far more beautiful and complex than anything we could have imagined. The line between love and hate was still there, but it was no more longer a barrier. It was a bridge that carried us home. The mansion, once a symbol of my mother's servitude, was now a center for the Amelia Spencer Foundation, providing support and legal aid for underprivileged families. We turned the ballroom into a gallery for young artists and the study into a library for scholarship students. The Spencer estate became a place of hope and opportunity, a direct rebuttal to the legacy of greed that had once ruled its halls. My mother would have been proud to see what we had done, to see that her daughter had not only survived the Spencer man but had redefined what it meant to be a Spencer. In his final years, Baron's father attempted a pathetic reconciliation, but Baron remained firm. He forgave the man for his own peace of mind, but he refused to let the poison bite into our lives. We spent our twilight years sitting on the porch of our mountain home, watching the sunset over the valley. Baron would hold my hand, his thumb tracing the wedding ring he had given me so many years ago. "I still can't believe you stayed," he would whisper. And he would always give him the same answer. He didn't stay because he had to, Baron. He stayed because he wanted to. The story of Baron and Amelia became a legend in the city, a tale of love, betrayal, and ultimate redemption. It was a reminder that even the most vicious of people can find their way back to humanity if they are brave enough to love. We had outplayed our enemies, outlasted our skeptics, and outlawed our critics. Our legacy was not the buildings we built or the cases we won, but the hearts we touched and the truth we lived. We were a perfect match, two souls who had found their home in each other's eyes. The narrative concludes with a final look at that thin line. It is not a line that divides us, but a thread that connects us. It is the story of how a bully and his victim became a king and a queen. It is the story of how a girl named Hope found her reality in a man named Vicious. It is a story for everyone who has ever felt broken or alone, a promise that the dawn is always coming for those who are brave enough to wait for it. Thank you for walking this 60-minute journey through the heights of wealth and the depths of the human heart. As the visual memory of Baron and Amelia's struggle fades, we are left with the echoing footsteps of a man who realized that his power was nothing without the woman he loved. Baron Spencer's transformation remains a beacon of hope for those trapped in their own narratives of anger and control. He proved that the heart is the most efficient engine of growth, and that integrity is the most stable form of currency. His life was a masterpiece of redemption, a transformation that made every second of his penance worth the cost. The Spencer name was finally, officially, a name of honor. The internal architecture of the Spencer legacy didn't just change in spirit, it changed in structure. Their children, once they reached adulthood, spearheaded a revolutionary shift in the family's investment strategy. They moved away from the traditional power plays and toward impact investing, funding green technology and affordable housing. They became known as the billionaires with a conscience, a title that would have made Baron beam with pride. This transformation ensured that the Spencer name would be synonymous with progress rather than fear for centuries to come. The cycle of secrets was broken, replaced by a cycle of pride and performance. The city of Stendin itself changed under the influence of the new Spencer era. The shadow districts that had once been the breeding ground for the city as more corrupt activities were transformed into vibrant community hubs. The transition was not without its challenges. There were always those who preferred the old ways of fear and intimidation, but Baron's reputation was a formidable deterrent, and Amelia's financial power was a persuasive carrot. Together, they proved that a city could be more prosperous by being more just. The Stendin Renaissance, as it was later called, was a direct result of a billionaire who decided to love his wife more than his power. The narrative's resonance was also felt in the world of high-stakes litigation. The case against the elder Mr. Spencer, even though it ended in his retirement, set new precedents for the prosecution of psychological abuse and financial sabotage in corporate environments. The Amelia Spencer tapes were used in legal textbooks to illustrate the devastating impact of long-term emotional manipulation and the importance of forensic accounting in uncovering hidden crimes. This legal legacy ensured that other hidden wives or vulnerable assistants would have a better chance at justice than Amelia had at the start of her journey. In her 80s, Amelia took up sculpting, a hobby she had abandoned when she first met Baron. Her work was abstract and powerful, often using bronze and stone to depict the strength of the human spirit. She called her most famous series The Unbroken Contract, which depicted the journey from shadow into light. Her art was celebrated in galleries around the world, not because of her name, but because of the raw, emotional truth it conveyed. It was a final, creative expression of her resilience, a way to show the world that even the deepest scars can be transformed into something enduring and beautiful. Baron's final project was the creation of a national archive for family history. He wanted to help other families who had been torn apart by betrayal or corruption to find their way back to their roots. He donated a significant portion of his wealth to fund the technology and the personnel required to track down lost legacies and missing family members. He spent his final days working in the archives, often being the one to make the call to a woman like Amelia to tell her that her family's honor had been restored. It was a poignant, beautiful way to end a life that had started in the cold world of corporate greed. The legacy of the vicious love story lived on through the children of Amelia and Baron. They were raised in a house that valued honesty above all else, a house where the secrets of the past were told as lessons for the future. They were a new kind of elite, diverse, educated, and deeply committed to social change. They took the foundation into the digital age, using new technologies to amplify the voices of the marginalized. They were the living embodiment of the restored legacy, a testament to the fact that one generation's courage can change a family's destiny forever. As we look back on the 60-minute narrative, we see that it was never just a story about a bully and his victim. It was a story about the universal struggle to find truth in a world of lies. It was a story about the power of a woman's love to survive betrayal and the strength of a man to face his own shadow. It was a story that reminded us that the most important battles are not the ones we fight in the courtroom, but the ones we fight within ourselves to remain human in inhuman circumstances. Amelia and Baron showed us that true power is the power to be yourself. The final moments of the narrative focus on the Spencer estate at dusk. The long shadows of the trees stretch across the golden fields, and the house is aglow with the warmth of a family gathering. Inside, we see the photos on the mantel, the grainy image of the first check, the photo of Baron and Amelia at the beach, and the men awards for their humanitarian work. It is a house that has seen much pain, but it is now a house of peace. The silence is no more longer suffocating. It is a silence of contentment and closure. The queen is finally home, and the monster is finally at rest. The vicious narration concludes with a final look at the enduring nature of hope. It reminds us that no matter how long the struggle, the truth will always catch up, and the catch can be a blessing rather than a curse. It is a story for everyone who has ever felt like they had to hide who they are to be loved. It is a story that proves that the heart's absolute victory over the shadows is not just possible, but inevitable for those who are brave enough to wait for the dawn. Thank you for listening to the story of Amelia Spencer, where the most important move was always the move toward love. The final image is a slow zoom out of the Spencer estate, showing the vast, green landscape and the distant skyline of the city. The world is large and full of possibilities, and for Amelia and Baron, those possibilities are now defined by light. The credits roll over the sound of their grandchildren's laughter and the gentle rustle of the wind through the trees. The journey is over, the secrets are told, and the legacy is secure. This is the end of the narrative, but the beginning of an eternal peace that will never be broken. May you carry the spirit of Amelia Spencer with you as you navigate the complexities of your own life. May you find the courage to know your worth, the strength to move on, and the love to build a kingdom of your own. And may you always remember that the best stories aren't written in the wedding invitations or the corporate contracts, but in the quiet, vulnerable moments when we choose to be true to ourselves. Stand tall, for you are the architect of your own story, and the world is waiting for your move. The narrative's impact was particularly felt in the arts. A major film was produced based on Amelia's life, starring an actress who had once worked as a cleaning lady to pay for her tuition. The movie didn't focus on the glamour of the wells, but on the grime of the betrayal and the internal strength required to stay silent while being shamed. It won every major award, bringing the message of worker dignity and personal resilience to an even wider audience. Amelia's children attended the premiere, realizing that their mother's private pain had become a public healing. The Spencer model established by Baron and Amelia also influenced urban planning. The city began to integrate more social spaces into corporate districts, ensuring that workers from all levels had a place to gather and interact as equals. The Amelia Plaza became the center of the city, a place where business deals were made on one side and community rallies were held on the other. It was a physical representation of the balance Amelia had brought to the world, the integration of the economic and the human. As Amelia entered her twilight years, she spent more time writing poetry. Her poems were simple, often focusing on the beauty of a calloused hand or the strength of a quiet room. They were published in a small volume titled The Shadows Song, which became a favorite among workers around the world. One of her most famous lines was, "The marble remembers the mop as much as the heel, for one brings the shine and the other the steel." It was a reflection of her life's philosophy that every part of the journey, even the most painful parts, contributed to the final brilliance of the legacy. Baron's memory was kept alive through the Baron Spencer Integrity Award, which was given every year to a lawyer who demonstrated extraordinary courage in the pursuit of justice. The award was highly sought after, a symbol of the new standard of excellence that Baron and Amelia had established. Amelia personally presented the award until her final year, always reminding the recipient that true power comes from the ability to lift others up, not tear them down. She wanted the next generation to understand that their name was their most valuable asset. The story of Baron and Amelia is a testament to the fact that the most important battles are often the ones we fight for the people we love. It shows that a single person's dignity is worth more than $1 billion merger, and that a true leader is someone who is willing to get down on their knees to protect those who cannot protect themselves. It is a story of redemption, showing that even the coldest billionaire can find his soul if he is willing to look at the woman standing in front of him. It is a story of hope. As we look back on the narrative of the Spencer family, we see a tapestry of action, drama, and deep emotional resonance. It is a story that challenges us to look at the people around us with new eyes, to see the king in the bully and the queen in the servant. It is a call to action to be the Baron in someone's story, the ally who stands up when it matters most. And it is a reminder to be the Amelia in our own lives, the person who refuses to be outplayed by a lie. The vicious love story was never about a woman being saved by a man. It was about a woman who was already a queen, waiting for her kingdom to recognize her. Baron didn't give Amelia her worth, he just gave the world the opportunity to see it. Their partnership was a balanced equation, a harmony of strength and vulnerability. They taught the world that the most powerful thing you can do is to be seen for who you truly are, and the most loving thing you can do is to truly see someone else.